There are some events in human history that simply can't be explained. One of the largest categories of these unexplained events are human disappearances. Within what seems to be a blink of an eye, a person, or in some cases, entire towns can disappear without a trace of evidence to be found. In this video, I'm going to be covering some of the strangest human disappearances I've ever heard about. The wilderness of Nevada is an extremely dangerous place if you don't come well prepared. Temperatures regularly reach upwards of 100 degrees Fahrenheit from July to August, and the nights can get surprisingly cold. It's also home to 5 different venomous snake species. Needless to say, those who do wish to do some outdoor activities in that area need to be well prepared to handle the harsh conditions. This brings us to our first story. Kenny Veach was a 47-year-old Las Vegas resident. He was known by many as his YouTube handle, snakebitmcgee. Little did Kenny know that one comment on a YouTube video titled "Son of an Area 51 Technician" would lead him down a dangerous path. In his comment, Kenny expresses how he stumbled across a hidden cave near the Nellis Air Force Base. According to Kenny, the cave entrance was shaped like an M, and as he approached it, his entire body began to vibrate. This comment would spark the interest of several individuals who pushed Kenny to once again find the cave, assuming it was real. Kenny obliged these YouTube commenters and began to post about his attempts to locate the cave. His second cave attempt was uploaded to YouTube and was titled M Cave Hike.
Well, here I am on my hike up here in the mountains north of Las Vegas. This is a canyon I just walked up in. Now you can't tell, but my truck...
Unfortunately, to many of the viewers' displeasure, Kenny was unable to relocate the cave. The pressure was still on for Kenny, and many users continued to push him to try his luck again at locating the cave. Others attempted to dissuade him from returning, warning that the trek could be dangerous. On November 10th, 2014, Kenny would decide to embark on another attempt to locate the mountain and appease those who doubted him. Kenny would let his family know that he was going for, quote, a short overnight trip. But much to the shock of family and friends, Kenny never returned from his trek. His disappearance would make local news as the hunt to locate him began. For several days, rescuers made an attempt to locate Kenny. On November 22nd, 12 days after his disappearance, rescuers would locate Kenny's cell phone near an abandoned vertical mine shaft. This would be the last trail anyone would ever locate of Kenny. While rescuers stated that they weren't positive if Kenny was down in the mine shaft, they did note it as a likely possibility. Kenny's disappearance has sparked a multitude of theories. Some point to the obvious answers that he likely fell down a mine shaft and became trapped in an area which he couldn't escape. Others claim that he simply got lost in the Nevada desert and ran out of water. Some individuals have even claimed that aliens were involved in Kenny's disappearance. The disappearance of Kenny Veach remains one of the largest unsolved disappearances in the modern U.S. On December 24th, 1945, a fire would break out in Fayetteville, West Virginia, that would leave many stumped to this very day. George and Jenny Sauter were the parents of 10 children. George was an immigrant from Sardinia and took up work as a railroad hand in West Virginia. The Sauter parents decided that Fayetteville would be a perfect town to settle down in, given the large Italian immigrant population in the area. Things were bright for the Sauter family for quite some time, as George started his own trucking company that was seeing great success. Between 1923 and 1942, the Sauters would add 10 children to their home. However, everything wasn't quite sunshine and rainbows, as George Sauter had drawn some opposition from his avid dislike of Benito Mussolini. For those who are unaware, Mussolini was the dictator of Italy during World War II. In present day, discussing your dislike of Mussolini and America would not be a controversial statement. but given the fact that George lived in a primarily Italian immigrant town, he began to draw some heat from others. In October of 1945, a life insurance salesman would visit the Sodder house and warn George that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed for his, quote, dirty remarks regarding Mussolini. 2 months later, the Sodder family would celebrate Christmas Eve together. After everything was said and done, George and Jenny would allow 2 of her sons, 14-year-old Maurice and 9-year-old Louis, to stay up so long as they closed up the house before bed. Around midnight, Jenny Sodder would be awakened by a telephone call. Jenny grabbed the phone, and to her confusion, the caller was a voice she didn't recognize. According to Jenny, she could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses on the other side of the phone. She also stated that the anonymous caller had a, quote, weird laugh. One notable detail that will be important later, Jenny noticed around the house, was that the lights were still on at this point, something that the kids would typically turn off before heading to bed. She didn't think much of it and went back to sleep. At 1 a.m., Jenny would be awakened by a loud bang on the roof that was followed by a rolling sound. Once again, she fell asleep, but about 30 minutes later, Jenny would be abruptly awakened by the smell of smoke. Quickly, George, Jenny, 4 of her children, Marion, John, George Jr., and Sylvia would escape the home. The remaining children, who slept upstairs, never responded despite the calls from their parents. George would make an attempt to rescue his children from the attic by climbing the house's outside wall. But to his confusion, the ladder he typically keeps in its resting spot against the house was missing, so it made the attempt impossible. Thinking fast, George attempted to utilize 2 of the trucks he owned to drive them up against the house so he could reach the attic for a rescue attempt. But strangely enough, the trucks wouldn't start despite being in working condition the day prior. On top of all this, when Jenny attempted to call the fire department from her telephone, it would not work. All of these strange circumstances led to the family having to watch their home burn to the ground without the ability to rescue those inside. Strangely enough, when the fire department did arrive later on, they were not able to locate any skeletal remains in the wreckage. In the following weeks, police would investigate the scene and eventually arrest an individual who admitted to cutting the family's phone lines that night. But in his interrogation, he claimed that his intention was simply to steal some block and tackle and shut off the family's power. This anonymous man's identity would not be revealed to the public, but it seems that George Sodder would be convinced that he had something to do with the events that occurred that fateful night. Given all the strange details surrounding the event, George took it upon himself to contact the FBI and plead for them to consider this a kidnapping. Unfortunately for George, the FBI and Fayetteville police never took the case, stating that there simply wasn't enough concrete evidence to rule this a kidnapping. After George hired a forensic pathologist to search over the property, it became apparent that none of the children's remains were anywhere to be found. Given the fact that there were so many strange occurrences happening that night, the lights were left on, ladder was missing, trucks were unable to be started, the suspicious phone call, and more, it becomes fairly obvious that something else was going on behind the scenes. To this very day, authorities still have no idea what happened that fateful Christmas Eve night, and it seems that the mystery of the 5 missing Sodder children will not be solved anytime soon. In the year of 1585, a man named Sir Walter Raleigh would take it upon himself to found the first permanent English settlement in North America named Roanoke. Little did any of the settlers know at the time, but Roanoke would become one of the most unexplained mysteries in U.S. history. The settlement of Roanoke was founded on present-day Dare County in North Carolina. This new colony was plagued with disaster from the very beginning, as their relations with nearby native tribes were relatively unstable and unfriendly. On top of this, supplies were almost always at an all-time low. All of this led to the first attempt at Roanoke Island to be abandoned. This was obviously a disappointing prospect for the English crown, who wanted to secure a solid footing in the New World. A lot was riding on this expedition to succeed, so a year after the first attempt at Roanoke Island, this time a man named John White, who was the previous mayor of the first colony, was tasked with leading the next attempt at a settlement. John White would return to the same island, along with 115 other settlers. Once again, things turned sour for the colony as supplies began to dwindle and the harsh conditions became too much for the group to handle. It's said during a routine wellness check by a sailor named Simon Fernandez that the colony at Roanoke demanded to be rescued and wanted passage off the island. Fernandez denied the request and forced John White, along with all of his colonists, to remain on their new home, and claimed that he would return with more supplies for them. Unfortunately for everyone, this would be the last time anyone would have contact with the Roanoke colony. Fernandez returned to the island in 1590, but the entire colony was abandoned. According to Fernandez and his men, the colony was still fortified, but no one remained within its walls. The only piece of evidence in the territory was the word Croatoan carved into a tree, Croatoan being the name of an island roughly 50 miles south of Roanoke. Unfortunately, Fernandez would never follow this lead, as seas grew too rough, and after the men lost an anchor in the process, they decided it was time to return back to England. No one truly knows what happened to the members at Roanoke. Some, like the members at Jamestown who investigated the incident later, believe that they had been massacred by natives. Others believe the members assimilated into nearby native tribes, which has some validity behind it as rumors began to circulate around the area afterward of European members within local tribes. Other explanations say that they must have migrated south due to the message carved into the tree. Despite advances in technology and archaeological improvements, no one has ever been able to locate any clear evidence as to what truly happened at Roanoke Colony. The Aparecida do Norte is the second largest Catholic church in the world. It's located in southeast Brazil and is known for being one of the most popular pilgrimage locations, not for just Catholics, but tourists in general. It's currently estimated that 8 million people visit the church each year. One of those individuals was a 77-year-old woman named Beatriz Winnick, along with her husband of 60 years, Delmar. The couple decided it would make for a fun trip, so they decided to take a tour of the building and explore the city. The day was going along fine, and the two were enjoying their trip. Then, during their tour, Delmar and Beatriz decided to stop at a local shop within the basilica called Casa das Velas and peruse their supply of candles. After the couple had picked out what they wanted, Delmar told Beatriz to wait outside while he paid with the cashier. Some things to keep in mind about this. The group was on a tour with roughly 30 other people, and the shop itself had a window in which you can clearly see the outside street from. According to Delmar and other family members there, Beatriz simply vanished within the blink of an eye. 1 second she was waiting outside at the shop entrance. The next she was nowhere to be seen. According to Beatriz's son, she was incredibly close with her husband and would never leave his side. So for her to simply walk off would be very uncharacteristic. The family would search all day and all night for her, check with every local nursing home, hospital, and mortician, but no one could locate Beatriz. 9 years later, there is still no evidence regarding Beatriz's disappearance. How a woman can simply disappear within the blink of an eye during the day, right in eye view of her family, is simply bizarre. Beatriz's family still searches for answers to this very day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like and subscribing. The support for this channel has been tremendous recently. I can't thank all of you enough. If there's any creepy and interesting stories you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Have a great day. Goodbye.